At my own funeral, my wife and son laughed. I stood just steps away alive, watching them celebrate my death like a payday. I didn't flinch, not yet. But when the lawyer walked in with the new will, everything changed. My son dropped his drink. My wife went pale. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from in the comments. My name is Frank Thompson, 68 years old, retired general contractor, and according to my death certificate, victim of a massive coronary while fishing alone at Lake Chardon last Tuesday. Except I wasn't dead. Not physically, anyway. He looks real peaceful, I heard my brother-in-law tell someone. The casket was closed, so how the hell would he know? Just another lie in a room full of them. I adjusted the maintenance worker's cap, pulled low over my eyes, and pretended to check the thermostat. No one spares a glance for the help. That's something you learn after 4 decades in construction. The invisible men who build and maintain the world remain unseen by most folks who walk through it. 37 people showed up for my funeral. I counted. 37 out of the hundreds I'd employed. The dozens I'd helped when they needed money. The neighbors I'd known for decades. My chest tightened. But not from the heart condition Martha believed had finally caught up with me. He always said he'd die with his boots on, Timothy told a distant cousin with practiced sorrow. Dad was nothing if not predictable, was I? Predictable Frank. Reliable Frank. Frank who worked 60-hour weeks for 30 years to put Tim through private school and then Yale. Frank who postponed retirement 5 years so Martha could renovate the house exactly how she wanted. Frank who never complained, never strayed, never questioned, until 3 weeks ago. I'd come home early from a doctor's appointment, just a routine checkup where they told me to watch my cholesterol, nothing serious. The garage door was broken that week, so I parked on the street and walked in through the front door. That's when I heard them in the kitchen. "The life insurance will pay out even if it's a heart attack, right?" Tim was asking. "It's not like suicide where they can deny the claim." "For God's sake, Tim." Martha's voice had that edge to it, the one I'd heard more frequently these past few years. "Your father isn't going to kill himself. He's just going to die eventually. Probably sooner than later with his blood pressure. I'm just saying, Mom, I've got the business expansion planned for next quarter. I need to know we can count on the capital. We can count on it. The policy is ironclad, and I made sure he increased the coverage last year. 3 million plus the house. The house I'd built with my own 2 hands when we were newlyweds. The business I'd founded and handed to my son when he finished business school. I'd backed out silently, driven to Malone's bar, and nursed a whiskey until my hands stopped shaking. Then I called the only person I could trust, my oldest friend and attorney, Sam Reynolds. "They're just talking, Frank," Sam had cautioned over the phone. "People say things they don't mean all the time." "You didn't hear them," I'd answered. This wasn't the first conversation they've had about my expiration date. After 50 years of friendship, Sam knew when I was serious. "What do you want to do about it?" That's how Operation Dead Man Walking began, a chance to see who really cared if Frank Thompson shuffled off this mortal coil. Now, watching Martha accept condolences with one hand while checking her watch with the other, I knew I'd made the right call. My wife looked 10 years younger today, wearing a black dress that was a bit too stylish for a widow in mourning. Timothy stood beside her, his arm around her shoulders, occasionally squeezing her in a way that seemed more celebratory than comforting. "The service was lovely," said Barbara Whitaker from our church group. "Frank would have appreciated the simplicity." Martha nodded solemnly. "He hated fuss. Always said when his time came he wanted something quick and dignified." She glanced toward the exit. "We're having a small reception at the house afterward for close friends and family. A small reception at the house I'd paid off 20 years ago. The house where, if things had gone according to their plan, I'd have died in my sleep sometime in the next year or 2. I felt a tap on my shoulder and nearly jumped out of my skin. "They're starting to wrap up," whispered Sam, disguised in a dark suit and sunglasses, pretending to be a distant business associate. "We should get out before the procession to the cemetery." I nodded and followed him through the maintenance door and out to his car parked behind the funeral home. Once inside, I pulled off the cap and work shirt, revealing a plain blue polo underneath. "Jesus, Frank, your own wife." Sam shook his head as he drove us away from Evergreen. "I've been practicing law for 40 years, seen marriages fall apart in every way imaginable. But this is something else." 42 years, I said quietly. 42 years, and she didn't shed a real tear. "What about your brother?" Kevin looked genuinely upset. I snorted. Kevin and I haven't spoken in 5 years, not since I refused to loan him money for that harebrained food truck scheme. He's just making an appearance to see if he's in the will. Sam drove in silence for a while before asking, "Are you sure you want to go through with the rest of this?" We could stop now, tell them it was all a mistake. I looked out the window at the town I'd lived in my entire life, the main street where I'd opened my first office, the park where I'd taught Tim to throw a baseball, the community center I'd helped renovate for half what it should have cost, because it was the right thing to do. "No," I said firmly. "I need to know how far they'll go." The funeral was just Act 1. Sam sighed and turned onto the highway. "Then let's get you to the motel. Tomorrow the lawyer arrives with the will, and that's when the real show begins." We checked into the Lakeside Motel under Sam's cousin's name, a dingy, forgotten place on the outskirts of town where no one would recognize me. The kind of place where you pay cash and the clerk doesn't look up from his phone. In the musty room, I sat on the bed and thought about the life I'd built. I'd started Thompson Construction with a pickup truck and a toolbox, worked 18-hour days for years, sacrificed weekends and vacations. I remembered the pride I felt when we landed our first major contract, a strip mall on the west side. Martha had been proud too back then. She'd brought lunch to the job site, taken photos of me in my hard hat to show her friends. When had that changed? When had I become a ticking time bomb to her, a walking ATM with an expiration date? I pulled out the old photo album I'd grabbed from my fishing cabin before dying. Our wedding day, 1982, Martha in her parents' backyard, looking up at me like I'd lassoed the moon for her. Timothy's birth in 85, me awkwardly holding this tiny red-faced miracle. Tim's high school graduation, college graduation, the day I handed him the keys to the office. Had it all been a lie? Or had something changed along the way? Had I changed? "You should eat something," Sam said, returning with sandwiches from the vending machine. "Not hungry," I muttered, still flipping through the album. "Frank, you need to keep your strength up. Tomorrow's going to be rough." Tomorrow. When Sam would arrive at my house in his official capacity as my attorney, to read the will to my grieving widow and son. Except the will they expected wasn't the will Sam would be reading. 3 weeks ago, after overhearing that kitchen conversation, I'd gone to Sam's office and made changes. Big changes. The kind of changes that would make Martha and Timothy show their true colors. "You think they'll contest it?" I asked, finally taking a sad-looking ham sandwich. Sam settled into the room's only chair. "Without a doubt. The new will essentially disinherits them both, except for nominal amounts. Nobody just accepts that, especially when they're expecting millions. But they can't win, right?" I was of sound mind. "You had the doctor examine me before I signed. They can't win on legal grounds, no. But they'll try character assassination. They'll claim you were paranoid, delusional. That's why I suggested the video testimony. The video we'd recorded in Sam's office, with me clearly explaining why I was changing my will. The evidence of the conversations I'd overheard. The bank records showing suspicious transfers from joint accounts to Martha's personal account over the past year. "Get some sleep," Sam advised, standing to leave. "The hardest part is still ahead." But sleep wouldn't come. I lay awake in that motel room, staring at water stains on the ceiling, wondering how my life had come to this. Legally dead at 68, hiding in a motel while my wife and son celebrated my passing. I thought about our last family dinner, just a month ago. Had there been signs I'd missed? Martha had seemed preoccupied, but that wasn't unusual lately. Tim had asked about my doctor's appointments, about whether I was taking care of myself. I'd interpreted it as concern. What a fool I'd been. Around 3 a.m. I gave up on sleep and turned on the TV, keeping the volume low. A rerun of an old western played, the kind my father used to watch. Men with clear moral codes, where you knew who the good guys and bad guys were. Real life wasn't so simple. By dawn, I'd made up my mind. I would see this through to the end. Not for revenge, though God knows that temptation burned in me, but for truth. For 42 years of my life that deserved more than a punchline at my funeral. Sam picked me up at 9 a.m. looking every inch the serious attorney in his best suit. "Ready?" he asked. I straightened my disguise, glasses, hat, and a fake mustache that made me look like a bad movie detective. As I'll ever be, Sam drove us to a spot near my house where we could watch the driveway. By 10 a.m., cars began arriving for the post-funeral reception. Neighbors bringing casseroles. Church friends with somber faces. Timothy's business associates making appearances to stay in his good graces. Look at them, I muttered. Vultures circling. Not all of them, Sam said quietly. Some of these people genuinely think they're comforting your family. Maybe he was right. I'd been seeing the worst in everyone lately. Hard not to when your wife and son are counting the days until your death. At 11:30, Sam checked his watch. It's time. The will reading is scheduled for noon. You'll call me right after? Tell me everything? Sam nodded. Every word, every reaction. And remember, stay here until I text you, it's clear. The last thing we need is for someone to spot you lurking around. I watched Sam's car pull into my driveway. Watched him walk up to my front door with his briefcase. The briefcase containing the document that would blow Martha and Timothy's world apart. Then I sat back in the car to wait, wondering if I was about to destroy what remained of my family, or if there was anything left worth saving at all. Sam's text came at 1:47 p.m., far longer than the hour I'd expected the will reading to take. The message was simple. It's done. Meet me at the diner. I drove the rental car carefully, keeping my hat low and taking the back roads to avoid being spotted. Small towns have eyes everywhere. Even wearing my disguise, I couldn't risk someone recognizing my driving habits or the shape of my shoulders. 40 years in one place, people know you even when they don't realize they do. Gus's diner sat on the edge of town, a chrome and neon relic that had somehow survived the franchise invasion. Sam and I had been meeting there since high school. I parked around back, next to Sam's Lincoln, and slipped in through the kitchen entrance. Another favor from another old friend, Gus himself, who thought I was hiding from an ex-wife from my wild days. Not entirely wrong, I suppose. Sam was in our usual booth, the corner one partly hidden by a fake plant. 2 cups of coffee steamed on the table. His tie was loosened, and he looked like he'd aged 5 years since morning. That bad? I asked, sliding in across from him. He took a long drink of coffee before answering. Worse? Tell me everything, I said, my heart hammering against my ribs. Don't leave anything out. Sam ran a hand through his thinning hair. I arrived at 11:55. Martha answered the door in that black dress from the funeral, but she'd already changed her earrings to those diamond ones you got her for your anniversary last year. Seemed chipper, all things considered. I nodded. Martha had always been careful about appearances. The neighbors would have been watching. Timothy was there with his wife, Jessica. His business partner, Alan, was hanging around too, which I thought was odd for a family will reading. Alan Prescott. I frowned. He has no business being there. Well, he was. Along with about a dozen other people. Neighbors, some church folks, that investment guy Timothy's been working with lately. Gregory Walsh, I supplied. The slick financial advisor who'd been sniffing around my retirement accounts for years. Right, anyway. I suggested we move to a private setting for the will reading, but Martha insisted everyone was family and could stay. She seemed confident, Frank, like she knew exactly what was coming. My stomach clenched. And then I started reading. Standard legal preamble, nothing exciting. Martha was nodding along, touching that locket you gave her, playing the grieving widow to perfection. Then I got to the meat of it. Sam leaned forward, lowering his voice, though no one was near enough to hear. The moment I read the line about the revised date, making it clear this was a new will from 3 weeks ago, her face changed. Like a mask slipping, Timothy nearly knocked over his drink. I could picture it perfectly. Martha's practiced grief giving way to confusion, then alarm. Go on, I urged when Sam paused to sip his coffee. I read the specifics. The house and $50,000 to Martha. $50,000 to Timothy. Your fishing cabin and boat to your brother Kevin. $20,000 to your sister in Arizona. The remaining estate, approximately $2.8 million in investments, life insurance, and business assets, to be divided between the local veterans' home and a trust for trade school scholarships. Sam grimaced. That's when all hell broke loose. Martha actually screamed, Frank. Not a little gasp, a full-throated scream like someone had stabbed her. Timothy started shouting that it couldn't be legal, that you must have been out of your mind. His exact words. I stared into my untouched coffee, watching the steam rise and curl. And the others? Scattered like cockroaches when the light comes on. Walsh practically ran for the door. Most of the neighbors made quick excuses. Helen stayed, though, whispering urgently with Timothy in the corner. What about Jessica? I asked, thinking of my daughter-in-law. She'd always seemed sweet, if a bit overwhelmed by Timothy's ambitions, crying quietly. Hard to tell if it was from the shock of the will or embarrassment at Timothy's behavior. Sam shrugged. Once the audience cleared out, Martha got very focused, started demanding to know when you'd changed the will, who had witnessed it, whether you'd seemed yourself. Fishing for grounds to contest, I murmured. Exactly. When I informed her that you'd been examined by Dr. Kaufman before signing and had the will properly witnessed by my office staff, she changed tactics, started suggesting you'd been influenced by someone. Asked if you'd been spending time with anyone unusual. I laughed bitterly. She thinks I had a girlfriend? That someone seduced me into changing my will? It's an easier story for her than admitting you overheard her plotting your death. Sam looked at me steadily. She specifically asked if you'd mentioned overhearing any conversations that might have upset you. So she knew. She suspected at least that I'd heard them that day in the kitchen. What did Timothy do? He was on the phone almost immediately with Gerald Hoffman. The name hit me like a physical blow. My son called Hoffman? The best estate litigation attorney in the state. Sam nodded grimly. By the time I left, Martha was on a tear, turning the house upside down, looking for any evidence of your state of mind these past few weeks. Timothy was promising her they'd contest the will and win. I sat back, suddenly exhausted. And no one, not one person, questioned why I would have changed my will so dramatically. No one thought, gee, maybe Frank had a reason. Your brother Kevin asked. Sam's voice softened. When everyone else was shouting or leaving, Kevin stayed quiet. After things calmed down a bit, he asked me directly if you'd left any explanation. Said it didn't sound like you to cut your family off without a damn good reason. A lump formed in my throat. Maybe I'd misjudged Kevin. We'd had our differences, but blood was still blood. What did you tell him? That I wasn't at liberty to discuss it, but that you had indeed left a sealed letter for family members that could be opened only in the event the will was contested in court. The letter detailing everything I'd overheard, along with the evidence Sam had helped me gather over the past 3 weeks. My insurance policy, or rather my family's life insurance policy on me. They'll contest, I said with certainty, without question. Hoffman already called my office before I could get to the diner. Sam checked his watch. Martha's probably tearing through your home office as we speak, looking for anything she can use to prove you were mentally unstable. She won't find anything. I've been careful for years, keeping records, backing up documents. I managed a thin smile. Contractors' habits. Always document everything. There's something else. Sam hesitated. Timothy mentioned something about the pills to Martha as I was leaving. Said they needed to get rid of them before anyone starts asking questions. A cold weight settled in my chest. Pills? What pills? I don't know. But Martha shushed him immediately, told him they'd discuss it later. When she saw me watching, she made some comment about your heart medication. But I wasn't on heart medication. Just over-the-counter supplements and occasional ibuprofen for my back. Nothing prescription strength, nothing that could be... Sam, I said slowly, I think they were poisoning me. The words hung in the air between us, monstrous and almost unbelievable. Yet suddenly so many things made sense. My increasing fatigue over the past year, the dizzy spells, the stomach problems that came and went mysteriously. That's a serious accusation. Frank, Sam's legal mind was already at work. We'd need proof. The coffee, I said suddenly. Martha started buying this special organic coffee about a year ago. Said it was better for my heart. She'd make a pot every morning, pour me a thermos to take to the cabin when I went fishing. My hands started to shake. I stopped drinking it 3 weeks ago, after I heard them talking. Haven't had a dizzy spell since. Sam's expression darkened. We need to get a sample of that coffee. And you need to see a doctor. A different doctor, not your usual one, for a toxicology screening. If they were poisoning me slowly... The reality of it hit me all at once. My wife of 42 years, my only son. Jesus Christ, Sam. They weren't just waiting for me to die. They were helping it along. Let's not jump to conclusions without evidence, Sam cautioned, though his face told me he believed it too. But yes, we should move quickly. If they were doing something, they'll be destroying evidence now. I need to get into the house, I said, my mind racing. Need to get samples, check my office, see if... Whoa, slow down. Sam grabbed my arm. You can't just walk in there. You're supposed to be dead, remember? And they're on high alert now. Then what do we... My words were cut short by the sharp ring of Sam's phone. He checked the screen, frowned, and answered. Reynolds speaking. His frown deepened as he listened. When? Are you certain? Another pause. Yes, I understand. I'll be there as soon as possible. He hung up, his face grim. What is it? I demanded. That was my assistant. Martha just filed an emergency petition with the court, claiming the new will should be invalidated because you were being systematically drugged by an unknown party, affecting your mental competence. I stared at him. She's claiming someone else was drugging me? That's a preemptive strike, Sam finished. If we ever discover evidence that you were being poisoned, she's already established her defense. That she was aware of it and was trying to protect you, not implicate herself. That's insane. No one would believe. People have believed crazier things. Frank, especially when the accused is a respected community member with no prior suspicions against her. Sam was already gathering his things. I need to get to the courthouse and see this filing. You need to stay out of sight. But I was barely listening, a new and terrible thought forming. Sam, what if this wasn't the first time? What do you mean? My father died of heart failure at 66. Everyone said it was genetics, that I should watch my own heart. I looked up, cold realization washing over me. What if Martha was practicing? Sam didn't answer, but the look on his face told me he'd had the same terrible thought. As he hurried out to deal with Martha's legal maneuvers, I sat alone in that booth, the untouched coffee growing cold. I thought about the 42 years I'd spent with a woman who could now so easily claim I'd been drugged, because she'd been the one doing it all along. I checked into a different motel that night, under yet another fake name. Paranoia had become my constant companion. If Martha had indeed been poisoning me, who else might be involved? Our family doctor who'd always commented on my concerning heart rhythm? The pharmacist who'd repeatedly suggested supplements for cardiac health? Sleep eluded me again. I paced the small room, my mind churning with questions. How long had this been planned? Was it just about money, or was there something else? Had Martha ever loved me at all? Around midnight, my burner phone rang. Sam with news. Martha's petition has been temporarily granted, he said without preamble. Judge Watkins signed an emergency order freezing all assets until a hearing next week. Judge Watkins, another poker buddy, another connection to the life I thought I'd built securely. What does this mean for our plan? I asked. It complicates things. Sam sounded exhausted. But it also gives us an opportunity. Martha's opened the door to the possibility of you being drugged. Now we just need to prove who was doing the drugging. How? They've had time to dispose of anything incriminating. Maybe not everything. I have a contact at the police department who might be willing to do us a favor. Execute a search with enough advance warning for us to know when it's happening, but not enough for Martha to hide everything. I thought about it. We need more than just the coffee. We need their communications, texts, emails, already working on subpoenas, but those take time. Sam paused. There's another option, Frank, a more direct one. I'm listening. You could come back from the dead. Walk into that house tomorrow and confront them. The shock alone might get them to reveal something. For a moment I was tempted. The look on Martha's face would almost be worth it. But no, I said finally. If we're right, if they were slowly poisoning me, then I'm safer dead for now. The moment they know I'm alive, I might not stay that way for long. Sam couldn't argue with that logic. Get some rest, Frank. Tomorrow we start gathering real evidence. After we hung up, I lay on the lumpy motel bed, staring at the ceiling and wondering how my life had come to this, hiding in a cheap room, legally dead, suspecting my family of attempted murder. The worst part wasn't the betrayal. It was the doubt now cast over every memory, every moment I'd treasured. Had Martha smiled at our wedding because she loved me or because she saw a provider? Had Timothy's hugs been affection or just maintenance of his inheritance? When had love turned to calculation? As the night deepened, a plan began forming in my mind. If Martha and Timothy wanted to play hardball with emergency petitions and allegations, then perhaps it was time for Frank Thompson to rise from the grave and show them what a lifetime in business negotiations had taught me about calling a bluff. Tomorrow, I decided. Tomorrow the dead would speak. Morning came with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. Maybe it was the clarity that comes with having nothing left to lose. Or maybe it was the righteous anger, finally breaking through the shock and hurt. Sam arrived at my new motel hideout at 7 a.m. sharp, carrying a laptop and a greasy bag of breakfast sandwiches. "You look like hell," he observed, handing me a coffee from a diner. Not the one possibly laced with whatever Martha had been using on me. "Feel worse," I admitted, taking a cautious sip. "But I'm ready to end this." Sam nodded, opening the laptop. "I've got news. My contact at the police department came through. Detective Wilson, remember him? His kid got that scholarship from your company foundation." I nodded. Wilson's daughter had been the first recipient of the Thompson Construction Trades Scholarship 5 years back. She was a welder now, doing well for herself. "Wilson agreed to help unofficially," Sam continued. "He took samples from your house yesterday. Said he was following up on a routine matter related to your death certificate. Grabbed the coffee, some pill bottles from your bathroom, even the mug you used regularly." My heart raced. "And? Preliminary tests show elevated levels of something in the coffee. They're doing more specific testing now." Wilson called it suspicious but inconclusive. "Not enough for an arrest," I said, disappointment bitter in my mouth. "Not yet. But he's also pulled Martha and Timothy's phone records, officially part of validating your cause of death since you died alone." "And?" Sam's eyes gleamed. "Lots of calls and texts between them in the days before your death. Plus, Timothy made 3 calls to a burner phone purchased with cash at a convenience store outside town. Wilson's trying to get the security footage." I paced the small room, thinking, it's still circumstantial. "They could explain it away. There's more." Sam pulled a folder from his briefcase. "I had my paralegal dig into Timothy's finances. He's in trouble, Frank. Deep trouble." He spread several documents on the bed: bank statements, loan applications, credit reports. "The business expansion he mentioned? It's not going well. The new location is hemorrhaging money. He took out a second mortgage on his house 3 months ago. Maxed out credit cards. And look at this." Sam pointed to a loan application. He listed expected inheritance as collateral for a high-interest loan from a private lender. Jesus, I sat heavily on the edge of the bed. He was counting on my death to save him from financial ruin? Exactly. "And Martha," Sam pulled out another document. "She's been making regular cash withdrawals for the past year. Small amounts, nothing suspicious on its own, but it adds up to nearly $50,000. A getaway fund," I murmured. "Or payments to someone." My thoughts exactly. "Wilson's looking into it, but carefully. He doesn't want to tip them off." I stared at the evidence spread before me, the paper trail of my family's betrayal. "It's not enough, Sam, not yet, no," he agreed. "But it's a start. Wilson thinks with the preliminary toxicology results, he can get a warrant to search more thoroughly, access their email accounts, really dig in." "How long?" "A few days, maybe a week." "These things take—" "I don't have a few days," I interrupted. "The hearing on Martha's petition is Monday. If the judge sides with her, she could gain control of everything while the will is contested." Sam frowned. "What are you suggesting?" I took a deep breath. "I need to confront them. Not as Frank back from the dead, not yet. But I need to get them talking, get a confession. That's dangerous, Frank. If they really tried to poison you once—" "I'm already dead to them," I reminded him. "They won't be looking for a ghost." After hours of argument, Sam reluctantly agreed to my plan. His paralegal, a young woman named Rachel, who'd been with his firm for 5 years and whom I'd never met, would approach Martha with questions about my unusual behavior before death. She'd claim to be gathering evidence for the hearing, supposedly working for Sam, but would hint that she had concerns about the case. The bait was set that same afternoon. Rachel called Martha, introducing herself and requesting a meeting to clarify some points about Frank's final days. Martha, eager to build her case about my mental incompetence, readily agreed. I watched from Sam's car across the street as Rachel entered my home at precisely 2 p.m. Sam had fitted her with a recording device, not admissible in court perhaps, but enough to give us direction. "This is insane," Sam muttered beside me. "If Martha realizes Rachel's working both sides—" "Martha's too confident to suspect," I said. "She thinks she's already won." 45 minutes later, Rachel emerged, her face professionally neutral, until she slid into the back seat of our car. "You were right," she said, pulling a small recorder from her purse. "They're not even being that careful anymore." We drove to Sam's office to listen to the recording in private. Rachel had played her part perfectly, expressing just enough doubt about Sam's handling of the case to get Martha talking. I'm worried about the toxicology tests. Martha's voice came through the recorder, sounding concerned but controlled. Frank had been acting strangely for months. Paranoid, forgetful. What kind of medication was he on? Rachel asked innocently. Just some heart supplements I got from our doctor, Martha replied smoothly. Frank was terrible about his health. I had to practically force him to take his medicine. And did anyone else know about these supplements? Rachel prompted a pause. Timothy helped me research them. Frank trusted him more than me toward the end. The conversation continued, Martha carefully constructing her narrative of a concerned wife dealing with an increasingly paranoid husband. But then Rachel mentioned the coffee. The police took samples of everything, she said casually, including his regular coffee. A moment of silence on the tape. Then, why would they do that? Standard procedure, I guess. Checking for anything unusual. Martha's voice changed subtly. There was nothing unusual about his coffee. It was just that organic brand everyone drinks now. The same brand you've been buying for about a year, Rachel asked. Since around the time Mr. Thompson's symptoms started. Another pause, longer this time. Who told you about symptoms? Oh, I just assumed, from what you said about him acting strangely. Rachel backpedaled expertly. The tape continued with Martha growing increasingly guarded. Then a door opened and Timothy's voice entered the conversation. Mom, did you see that? He stopped. Who's this? Rachel introduced herself again. Timothy's response was immediate and hostile. You need to leave now. We're not discussing anything else without our attorney present. I was just trying to help clarify. Out! Timothy shouted. The recording ended shortly after, with Rachel making a hasty but professional exit. Sam switched off the recorder. Not exactly a confession, but definitely suspicious behavior. They're rattled, I said. And that bit about the coffee. Martha practically confirmed she'd been giving me something. It's still not enough for criminal charges, Sam cautioned. No, I agreed. But it's enough for the next step. The next morning, Saturday, 3 days after my funeral, Detective Wilson called Sam with news. The toxicology tests on the coffee had come back positive for elevated levels of digoxin, a heart medication I'd never been prescribed. Digoxin overdose mimics heart failure, Sam explained after hanging up. Especially in someone with a family history of heart problems. Can they trace it to Martha or Timothy? Not yet. But Wilson's got enough for a search warrant now. They're executing it this afternoon. I nodded, a strange calm settling over me. Then it's time. Frank, think about this. I have thought about it. For 3 days, 3 weeks, and in some ways for 42 years. I stood, straightening my shoulders. I want to see their faces when they realize I know everything. Sam couldn't talk me out of it. At 3 p.m., just as Detective Wilson and his team would be finishing their search of my house, Sam drove me home, to the house I'd built with my own hands for a woman who'd tried to kill me. Martha's car was in the driveway, along with Timothy's BMW. Perfect. The gang was all here. Wait in the car, I told Sam. If I'm not out in 30 minutes, call Wilson. I walked up my own front path, the path I'd laid brick by brick 20 years ago, when we'd redone the landscaping. I'd inscribed a small heart in one of the bricks near the porch, a private message to Martha that I doubted she'd ever noticed. I didn't bother with the doorbell. I still had my key. The living room was a mess, the aftermath of the police search, no doubt. Martha and Timothy were at the kitchen table, heads bent together in urgent conversation. Neither looked up when I entered. The lawyer says we can still fight this, Timothy was saying frantically. They don't have enough to— Hello, Martha, I said quietly. Hello, son. Their heads snapped up in perfect unison. Martha's face went white, her hand clutching her chest in a gesture that might have seemed like shock to anyone who didn't know better. Timothy actually fell backward out of his chair, scrambling away as if I were truly a ghost. Frank? Martha whispered. How, not dead after all, I said, remaining in the doorway. Disappointing, isn't it? Timothy recovered first. Dad! This is a miracle. We thought, the doctor said, save it, I cut him off. I heard you both. 3 weeks ago, right here in this kitchen, planning for my convenient death, calculating the insurance payout. Martha's shock was morphing into calculation. I could see it in her eyes. Frank, you're confused. You've been sick, hallucinating. The digoxin in my coffee made sure of that, didn't it? I smiled without humor. The police just found it, by the way. Along with the pills Timothy said you needed to get rid of before anyone starts asking questions. Timothy's face crumbled. Dad, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. The business is failing. You needed money. Mom needed, what, Martha? Freedom. A new life with someone else. Or just relief from 42 years of a boring marriage to a predictable man. Martha stood, smoothing her shirt, always concerned with appearances. This is absurd. You faked your own death to what, test us? That proves you're not mentally competent. No sane person would do such a thing. No sane person would slowly poison their husband either. I stepped further into the kitchen. Did you do the same to my father? Is that where you got the idea? Or was I your first? Something flickered in her eyes, surprise perhaps that I'd made the connection. You've lost your mind, she said coldly. And you've just proven our case about the will. I laughed. The will is the least of your concerns now. Detective Wilson has enough evidence for criminal charges. Attempted murder, conspiracy. Timothy made a choked sound. Martha remained perfectly still. It won't stick, she said after a moment. Your word against ours. A confused old man with a family history of heart problems, hallucinating plots against him. Except for the video recordings, I said quietly. The ones from the cameras I installed in this house 3 weeks ago, after I overheard you. The ones that captured you adding something to my coffee each morning. The ones that recorded your conversations about dosages and timelines. This was a bluff, there were no cameras. But Martha wouldn't know that. Her composure cracked. You couldn't have... Check behind the kitchen clock, I suggested. Or inside the smoke detector in the hallway. Sam and I were very thorough. Timothy broke first. It was her idea, he blurted. All of it. I just needed help with the business, but she said you'd never give me more money that we needed to... Timothy, Martha hissed. Shut up. But he was unraveling fast. She said it would be painless, that you wouldn't suffer. That it was better than watching you decline with real heart problems. That would come eventually anyway. Martha lunged for her purse on the counter, but I was faster. Inside was a small revolver. My revolver from the bedside drawer where I'd kept it for home protection. Were you going to shoot me, Martha? Make it look like a suicide? I held the gun carefully by the barrel. Add another tragedy to the Thompson family story. The front door opened behind me. Detective Wilson stepped in, followed by 2 uniformed officers. Frank Thompson, Wilson said formally. You're supposed to be dead. Reports of my death were greatly exaggerated, I replied, handing him the gun. And I'd like to file a complaint against my wife and son for attempted murder. The next hours passed in a blur of statements, evidence collection, and formal charges. Martha remained stone-faced throughout. Timothy crumbled, confessing everything in exchange for leniency. The story exploded through our small town like wildfire. The respected contractor, the devoted wife, the ambitious son. Our family tragedy became everyone's favorite gossip. I moved into the fishing cabin, the one I'd left to Kevin in my will. He insisted I stay there, for as long as you need. A big brother. Maybe there was something to be salvaged from my family after all, just not the parts I'd expected. 1 month later, I sat on the cabin's dock, watching the sunset over Lake Chardon. Sam's car crunched up the gravel driveway behind me. Martha took a plea deal, he said without preamble, settling into the chair beside me. 20 years. She admitted to everything, including drugging your father back in the day. Said she'd perfected her technique since then. I nodded, unsurprised. And Timothy. 5 years with possibility of parole in 3. He cooperated fully. Sam hesitated. He asked to see you. Not ready for that, I said quietly. Maybe someday, but not yet. We sat in silence, watching the light fade from the sky. You know what the strangest part is? I said finally. I keep thinking about all those years, all those moments I thought were real. Our anniversary dinners, family Christmases. Was she just pretending the whole time? Sam had no answer for that. No one did. What will you do now? He asked instead. I considered the question. At 68, I'd lost my wife, my son, my home, and in some ways my past. But I was still breathing. Still here, live, I said simply. Just live. 2 days later, I submitted my story anonymously to an online forum for people who'd survived betrayal by loved ones. I didn't use real names, changed enough details to maintain privacy, but kept the truth of it, the shock, the pain, the slow process of rebuilding. The responses poured in. People who understood. People who'd been there. People who needed to know they weren't alone. Sometimes the family we're born with or build isn't the family that sustains us in the end. Sometimes betrayal comes from those we trust most, and sometimes surviving that betrayal is its own kind of triumph. I'm Frank Thompson. I attended my own funeral and watched my wife and son laugh beside my empty casket. But that wasn't the end of my story, just the beginning of a different one. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you loved, know this. It's not the end of your story either. There's life after betrayal. Different, harder in some ways, but real. Authentic in a way my 42 years of marriage never were. I survived. So will you. If this story helped you, share it. Comment below. Let others know they're not alone, because in the end that's what saved me. Not revenge, not justice, but the simple knowledge that somewhere, someone understood.